I'm coming. If you hand over to government to maintain, the budget the money and share it.
To live in that particular place that the house is. So it's supposed government to really compensate them so that and pay them and relocate them to where they are going and build another house for them.
Careful engineering and management to meet human needs. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Property Doctor. On this show, we talk about the acquisition of properties, the maintenance and management of properties to help you save time, save lives, save money, and make sure we all have peace of mind. My name is Funmi Amunega Ajayi, also known as your Property Doctor. You can connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube at Property Doctor NG, and on Twitter at Property Doc NG. And you can leave a comment below if you have anything to share with us on this topic we will be talking about today. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so on the link below, and you can also click on the alert button so that you can get a notification whenever a new episode comes up. I'm sure you will be missing a lot if you do not subscribe to this channel. Today we'll be talking about having a safe building. Shelter, as we all know, is very important and one of the basic needs of man. It is important we have a safe building as we move on to build a structure to meet a need for the safe existence of man. But we observed that recently people have been having some aspects, having problems in construction, and construction goes wrong sometimes, and making this shelter that is supposed to meet an important need becoming a dead trap. What can we do to have a safe building? We talked earlier about conducting structural integrity tests on suspicious building and buildings that maybe have gone through some trauma like fire outbreak, like earthquake and so on, or maybe a portion collapsed on that building. It's so sad that sometimes you find out that buildings fail during construction, and some even after construction. But at the design stage, some computer programs can even let you know if the building will fail or not. Today we have important people in the studio with us, and they are great guys in construction, and I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from them. I have with me engineer Oluwaseun Hassan. He's a structural engineer. He's a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. He's vast in experience and he knows a lot about construction. And he's here with us in the studio. He has given us some time. He's a very busy person, and we thank you for being with us in the studio today. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And also we have builder Odumbaku Wilson Olaiwola. He's a fellow Nigeria Institute of Building, a fellow of the Global Facilities Management, and he is the immediate past chairman of NIOB, that's the Nigeria Institute of Building, FCT chapter, and is also the financial secretary of Nigerian Institute of Building. He is also vast in building construction. His experience is something that we will all tap from today. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
So what is a safe building?
Well, a safe building is a building that has been constructed based on the designed.
On the design.
The structural design, the mechanical design, the architectural design, all those design that comes to mind and that has been approved for construction.
Okay.
A building that has also been constructed in that manner ought and is deemed to be structurally stable.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it meets its functional requirements and fit for human habitation.
Human habitation.
Yes.
So, sir, engineer, as a professional, how can we achieve having a safe building? Because you design the structures. So how can we achieve a safe building?
It's very easy. It all begins with the client, the end user of the building, the originator of the building. He actually knows what he wants and he goes for it. He assembles professionals. It begins with him to do the right thing. Maybe he starts with the architect, depending on the kind of structure. There are some structures that don't involve architects, but most structures involve architects, especially when you are dealing with structures that people live in.
When you say structures that don't involve architects, what kind of structure are you talking about?
Engineering structures. You're talking about dams. What has architect got to do with that? You talk about hydraulic structures, bridges.
Okay.
You talk about all those things. It's not all structures, but there are few of them.
Yeah.
There are few compared to other structures that involve architects. So architects are very, very key when it comes to a building. It starts with them. They receive the brief from the client,
yeah.
And then they assemble a consulting team, and then that shows that the client wants the right thing to be done. And then the seasoned consultants will have to do their job, ensure that everything that has to be done is done. Investigation that should precede design is carried out, and in the end, specifications are made, drawings are issued, report is given. And then the follow-up, that is in the final stage, where the construction, that's not even the final stage. The final stage is maintenance. And maintenance does not know an end. So the third stage, where you construct the building, all the assembled consulting team are meant to also be involved so that they can actually ensure that all their specifications in terms of drawing, in terms of notes, are implemented. And when you do that, then you should be able to know. Of course, the authorities have to be involved. And like my colleague mentioned, if the authorities are involved, you can't approve your own drawing. You have to meet the authority. They have the final approval. If a place, for instance, where you want to build is already a built-up area, you have to do a lot of assessment, environmental impact. If there are high-rise buildings, you know that there are all manner of pressures playing in the ground. You don't just go there and begin to dig. You are going to put all manner of buildings in danger. There is something we call ball pressure in engineering. If you have a high-rise building, they are exerting a lot of pressure on the ground. So you have to dig sensibly. You know, every design complexity, will have its own method of executing it. So a lot of things, the engineers and the consulting team, the architects, will also take all these things into consideration. So that at the end of the day, you don't endanger the building you are building, you don't endanger the buildings that are beside you, you don't endanger the environment that you are building. It's a lot of things. Once you ensure that, that means you have to actually put your money where your mouth is. Then you should be rest assured that if the authorities are giving you a pass that you can go ahead and the right thing is done, you don't have a problem.
Okay, now
you definitely come up with a safe structure. Yes.
We observed that recently some buildings collapsed during construction.
Yes.
In what way can we work together to prevent these things happening maybe again?
Yes. Building collapsing during construction, it's a common phenomenon, especially in this part of the world. It happens everywhere. I remember that there was a World Cup that was to hold somewhere in South America some time ago, that a stadium under construction actually collapsed, and people thought the event would not hold, but eventually they were able, even though it was a disaster, lives were lost, they were still able to catch up and make corrections to the errors that were made, and then the event actually holds. So it's a general phenomenon, it's not localized. But what I can say is that when an error is committed, humans are prone to error. All humans are prone to error. We are not God. So when we make some errors, it could be just a little error, and that can trigger disaster. Take, for instance, you have elements in a building. Every element is considered to carry a specific load. Maybe deliberately increased by the engineer just to cater for some things. and then an adjoining element fails, the load is transferred. If the engineer, for instance, has not actually done his due diligence, okay, let's just design this thing like this, just in case this element fails, and then the load is redistributed, and then all of a sudden this column is carrying more than it should, this beam is carrying more than it should. The building should not just come down all of a sudden, it should just fall, you know, and hang there, so that other people who are not trapped can easily go out. So engineers do a lot to ensure that these things are put in place, just to make sure that buildings don't collapse during construction. Most of the time, it is due to human error. And I will use this scenario to drive home my point. If you see a drunk man just, you know, drop dead, you know, after being drunk, he didn't die that day. He was dying the very day he took the first sip. And then he became addicted to it, kept drinking it, then organ was affected, then the system failed. So one thing cannot just bring a building down. A multiplicity of errors being committed and people are not taking correction will bring the building down. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you talked extensively on the collapse of building during construction.
Yes.
Now, Builder Wilson, what maintenance should we carry out in our building to ensure that it's safe, that is after construction, when people are now staying in the building?
Thank you very much. Like the engineer said, in the course of design, a building is designed to meet a particular function. If a building is designed to be just a dwelling, and then you turn it into a church, where people start coming in.
That means they change the use of the building.
Change in use comes into play, and then the pressure, the loading on that structure becomes overloading of the structure itself unexpectedly, and the design does not anticipate such loading. Definitely, when a building is in use and constantly, like you said, it will not give way one day.
Yeah.
But continuous loading and loading, the compromises start taking place, and before you know it, the structure will not be able to stand anymore. It will come down. Now, when you are in use, you must be sure that for the purpose for which that building is constructed, that is what you are subjecting it to. That is exactly what a building owner should enforce.
Number two, the building user.
The building owners, the building, for example, if I build a house and I have a tenant, he comes in and he takes a 2-3 bedroom and he wants to use it for normal dwelling. Yeah. And before you know it, every day becomes a cinema hall. They will start to, you turn this into this weekend football thing.
A viewing center.
A viewing center.
Yeah.
Before you know it, it is my right as the owner to say, oh boy, this is not our agreement.
Yeah.
So he must have to find his way. So that is very critical. The change in use is critical in leading to compromises of our structure. Number two, we must protect our elements.
When you say elements, what do you mean by the elements?
The building elements itself. Yeah. The roof, we must be sure that it serves its function. It must create that envelope that protects the whole building.
Yeah.
Okay? That also is key. And design also will have taken into consideration the kind of loading that goes on to that roofing system.
Yeah.
Because like I said, all elements of the building are designed to function in a particular manner. If the roof is designed to take a kind of loadings and the weather starts changing and you begin to experience a different loading, it is the occupant that we quickly have to observe and notify the owner if the owner is not the one in place.
Yep.
And immediately the design team must be brought in also to take note of this, and then the reconfiguration has to take effect immediately.
Okay.
Beyond that, the normal maintenance must be adhered to as a house owner. The normal maintenance to avoid deterioration.
Okay.
Because deterioration over time also can lead to collapse.
Yeah.
It can lead to collapse. So it is the function of all the house owner and the house user to be very conversant with all these little things and protect the building. Okay, for example, maybe you have a building in place and before you know it, erosion started eating the fruit of the foundation. And you are looking at it, you are not doing anything about it, because you know it's a superstructure that can withstand it. Before you know it, you are exposing the buildings to compromises that can result into collapse.
Yeah.
So we must be vigilant while we are in use, when the buildings are in use, so that we can take some precautions to avoid this kind of ungodly outcome that we experience.
Okay. Now, thank you for being with us. But let me ask one last question. That would be for you briefly. Sometimes you find out that some buildings maybe didn't continue in construction just because maybe the owner, or one reason or the other, maybe they were not able to continue the work. Now, if you want to go back to the construction of that building, as a layman, what should we do before we continue the construction of that building?
Yes, thank you for that question. If you have anything can happen, the policies could make buildings to be abandoned. If it's whether it's government building or private building, policies, issues, finance, and the rest of them. So if that happens, and you later find your feet and you want to go back to the construction, people will have to come in there and do what we call a thorough check. When you have a building that is under construction, you have reinforcements that are protruding.
Yes.
But when they protrude, they are exposed to weather for as long as the building is abandoned. So you have to check, were they properly protected? Those kinds of reinforcements are supposed to be protected. There are several kinds of protection you could use. Some could just grout with cement. A lot. I will not mention any here. If they were not, you have to check them. Have they started, corroding and all that? You check. The concrete itself, you have to do IDT is the strength.
What's IDT?
NDT, that is non-destructive test. And there are several of them. It's just to tell you, okay, concrete itself is a composite element. Composite, I mean, a lot of things come together to form this concrete. You have the sand on one side. So you want to know the position, whether the position of the steel is still the position as you thought it to be in design. You want to know whether the strength of that concrete is still the strength of that concrete. You want to know that there is no crack developed anywhere, because a building is not safe until all the elements are tied together. When all the elements, and you have mentioned what elements are, the beam, the slab, the columns, and the rest of them, they are tied together, then it is a system. Now, if they are not tied together, one is still dangling somewhere, a beam is still hanging not well connected to the other one, the forces are not functioning as the engineer has designed them to be. The forces, if a beam is supposed to connect that beam there, and then you terminate the beam, at a point, in preparatory to connecting it to that place, the force is in reversal, because at that point, the beam is not functioning as a beam, is functioning as a cantilever, but you never designed that. So you check all those force reversal. Have they existed anywhere? Has they resulted into crack? You check all those things. You just have to be thorough. When you check and you didn't see any crack, if you see any crack, don't patch it. In a building that is abandoned, you see a crack, you don't patch a crack, you mark it. When you mark the crack, you study it. Will it extend? If the crack is extending, then it's a telltale sign that something is wrong somewhere. And some people will just go and patch it up, and then they don't know that they're actually, So a lot of things also, when experts go there, it's an expert's work.
Yeah, so
there are some civil engineers, that's what they do. That's their own area of expertise. They may not be designing, that's what they do. That's the area of expertise. And a civil engineer should be vast. You know, when you check all those things, you know that there is no such thing happening in that building, then you are safe. They can now say, okay, I think the building is safe, nothing is wrong, everything is fine. Let's continue our construction work. And then you continue your work, and then you believe that nothing will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just an input. In Abuja, here, you do not need to have an abandoned building. If you have a building going over 2 years in construction, you must submit documentation for revalidation. And what does that mean? There will be what we call site assessment report, which will entail all these measures, the NDT test, with all other investigations that we manifest and documented. And then the design has to be resubmitted for approval, before you can go back to site, continue. All these are put together as a check to ensure that what we intend, we approved at the first beginning, is still what is functionable on site at that point in time.
Okay. So thank you very much, sir. One last word for our viewers, please.
Yeah, like it's a slogan in Nigerian Institute of Building: build wise, engage a professional builder for all your building production.
Thank you, sir.
And you can go to sleep without any fear of building collapse.
Thank you, sir. So, engineer,
yes.
One last word for our viewers.
Yes, professionals should be up and doing. You know, we have a lot of societies, associations, and then belonging to them is also helping us. I'm not speaking for them, but I belong to a couple of them. And so whatever they say, we must adhere, because we have people who are better than us. We have people who have vast experience globally. And then when they submit papers, we should try and read through. We should try and refresh ourselves. We should try and make sure that we are flowing with the trend globally, so that at the end of the day, when we localize our experience, it's for the safe and safety and comfort of the end users of all our buildings.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, viewers, for being with us today on this episode of Property Doctor. We hope you have enjoyed this particular episode, and we hope you learned something. We hope to see you same time next week for another interesting episode of Property Doctor. Until then, stay safe and God bless you. Bye.
I'm coming. If you hand over to government to maintain, the budget the money and share it.
To live in that particular place that the house is. So it's supposed government will compensate them, so that and pay them and relocate them to where they are going and build another house for them.
Careful engineering and management to meet human needs.